fentanyl crisis is devastating families, especially warning Mexican drug cartels are not slowing down production. Fentanyl, it's the killer drug poisoning community.
A deadly epidemic.
Is she reading?
Opioid overdoses ravaging America.
I'm going to grieve the rest of my life because that's my son.
This drug does not discriminate for socioeconomics or race or religion. You will die if you take this drug.
50 times more potent than heroin.
Fentanyl is robbing us of our children. It is robbing us of an entire generation.
As you can see, there's a line on this test strip, which means that this pill contains fentanyl.
Fentanyl is different from any other street drug that has ever been on the streets of the United States of America. It is an instant killer.
From our cities,
I walked into his room and I found him slumped over his desk.
To the suburbs.
When I answered the phone, the very, very first thing I heard was this horrific scream in the background.
The number of casualties is shocking.
They use babies as a shield in order to run that operation.
More than 100,000 deaths last year in the U.S.
We're not arresting our way out of this problem.
Families grappling with unfathomable loss.
All I kept saying is, no, he wouldn't leave me. He would not leave me.
Tonight, we take an in-depth look inside this public health threat. Welcome to this special presentation, Saving a Generation, the Fentanyl Crisis.
Tonight we're putting faces on a national crisis that is hitting home across generations. Good evening, I'm Brian Dorman.
I'm Sally Hernandez. We're here at the U.S.-Mexico border, a hotspot for drug cartels smuggling deadly fentanyl into the U.S. It's also where federal agents are trying to break that supply chain, with 130 people dying every single day from an opioid overdose. We start with the story of Janelle Rodriguez. She lost her son Noah to a fentanyl overdose. He was just 15 years old, bought what he thought was Percocet from a friend on Instagram. They met at the neighborhood park. Detectives told Noah's family they did not think Noah knew that pill was laced with fentanyl. It was midnight when the phone rang. Everyone in the house was asleep when Janelle Rodriguez reached for her phone. Her first thoughts, maybe it was her 15-year-old son Noah. He was spending the night at a friend's house. Maybe he was calling to say goodnight. Maybe he remembered what he wanted for his birthday. They were just talking about it on the ride over to his friends after a family barbecue.
So I told him how proud I was of him and that his 16th birthday was just around the corner. And I had always told Noah that when he turned 16, I was gonna make him the party of the century. So I was like, what do you wanna do for your 16th birthday? And he said, I don't know, but I do know I want Tres Leches cake.
Happy birthday, dear Noah. Happy birthday to you.
Birthdays have always been special to Janelle. She and Noah always had a deep bond.
Growing up, Noah was just an easygoing kid. Even into his preteens, we never really had issues with him. He was just always so respectful, not defiant.
What is it? It's the stem. You made it? Yes. Cool.
An honor student, an athlete at a high school in Kyle, Texas, and a big brother.
Jolene is a lot like him. She's full of energy.
Yeah.
We were strict parents. We were,
Yo, Noah?
We did all the things. We took his phone randomly. Brandon searched it because I'm not very savvy in that. We went through his room. We knew all the friends, knew all the numbers, the parents, and this and that. We did everything we thought to do.
Janelle and Brandon said they talked to Noah about drugs.
We knew Noah was experimenting. We knew. It was a fight in our home. But we didn't know. We thought we were fighting THC vapes.
But when Janelle picked up the phone that night, it wasn't Noah.
When I answered the phone, the very, very first thing I heard was this horrific scream in the background, and the parent in a panic, Janelle, I think Noah overdosed. So I got up as fast as I could, and I'm pacing my house just screaming, no, just back and forth, no.
Emergency crews were already on the way. Janelle could hear the desperation on the phone.
This parent on the other end of the line is telling me that I've been doing CPR on him for 20 minutes Every time I push on him, there's vomit coming out of his nose. She's like, I'm so tired. I'm begging her, don't stop, please don't stop. Just turn him over on his side so he doesn't choke on his vomit. Please don't stop.
Janelle rushed to Noah, calling her mom on the way in a race to see who could get there first.
We get to the scene and I'm ready to jump out of the car and go inside to be with him. But my mom approaches me and she's standing about 5 feet in front of me. She's just staring at me. And she puts her head down and shakes her head.
There had been a recent wave of sudden 911 calls of fentanyl overdoses, and medics quickly suspected the same in this case. They worked on him for 45 minutes, administering 2 Narcan injections. But it wasn't enough, and instead of planning Noah's epic 16th birthday, Janelle was now planning her son's funeral. Hundreds showed up to say goodbye. Noah was loved by his friends and family, but no one more than Janelle.
The biggest smile, like Noah's smile, just was gorgeous.
Staggering statistics show how the fentanyl crisis affects kids across the country. The CDC disclosed that in a 5-year period from 2016 to 2021, fentanyl overdose deaths in the U.S. had soared 279%, a surge in fentanyl-related fatalities that has led to a nearly 3-fold increase in deaths among older teens. Younger children are gaining access to pills or substances laced with fentanyl. For adolescents, the culprit is more likely a lack of awareness that the pill they are taking contains fentanyl. Frequently, teens get those counterfeit pills through social media sites.
These drug dealers, they're not out on the corner. They're not skulking in the alleyways. They're coming into your kids' bedrooms.
In July, 2 3-year-old twin boys from the San Fernando Valley in Southern California died after being exposed to fentanyl. This tragedy is part of a disturbing trend where babies and toddlers are increasingly becoming victims of the opioid crisis. In September of 2023, 4 children were poisoned from fentanyl exposure at a Bronx daycare in New York. One of those children, Nicholas, was just a year old, died. His father left to pick up the pieces.
She was lying every single day. The real business was behind this screen.
This was not really a daycare center. This was a drugs operation. And they used babies as a shield in order to run that operation.
It has been said time and again that no parent should ever have to bury a child. A mother in Bakersfield, California had to experience that trauma not once, but twice. Alexander and Andrew Cullors grew up in Bakersfield, California. They were just 5 years apart in age, but their mom, Carrie Walker, says they were very different in so many ways. Alex had a heart of gold.
Still had a stuffed animal stuffed under his pillow. He would never admit it, but he did. So he was kind of just the sweet one, the loving one, the heart.
But he also had his struggles. He had a learning disability, and in middle school he started skipping class, smoking pot, and getting into trouble with the law. But Carrie said he always tried to get his life back on track. Andrew was the fun one.
Andrew was definitely my baby. He just had fun with life, with everything.
He also started smoking marijuana in middle school, but unlike his older brother, his struggles were with overachieving, stressing himself out with unrealistic goals. The first to adulthood was Alex. At 18, he got a place and met a girl.
It was just constant fighting and problems and emotional tug-of-war with each other.
One night after a fight, he ended up back home with Mom.
He said, I have a headache, I don't feel right. And, I said, we need to take you to the hospital. And he said, no, I'll be fine. When I went into his room the next morning, he was already cold. So I called 911, and they told me to try CPR. I tried to explain to him, there's nothing. But I did. And no, there was no, he was gone.
How often do you think about that day?
Every single day.
Today, Alex lives on through his daughter.
We named her Alexandra Lee Cullors, and his was Alexander Lee Cullors.
Hey, what are you doing? No.
A baby girl that her dad never got the chance to meet. Today, she is 9 years old.
Yeah! It's amazing that she never met him, but she's so much like him. such a beautiful heart.
Each year that passed became a little more normal for Carrie. Andrew, of course, had a difficult time moving on without his older brother. He made a promise in his grief to never use drugs.
I would never use that stuff. No. You know, I would never do what my brother did. You know, I'm not him. I'd never do it.
And he did.
He did. Yeah. It's you know, you think it can't happen twice. There's just no way.
Andrew's body was found inside a car, parked at a gas station for 2 days. The coroner determined that he died from smoking Xanax that was laced with fentanyl.
All I kept saying is, no, he wouldn't leave me. You know, he would not leave me. There's no way he'd do this to me again.
In order to cope with her own grief, Carrie started a nonprofit to support other grieving moms called Steps of Change.
So I began just reaching out to actually his friends and parents, and I've gotten a lot of connections there, and sadly I've gotten a lot of funerals there. Children think they're invincible. So if someone gives them something, they think, you know, nothing's going to happen to me. It's different. I'm different. My son thought he was different than his brother. He wasn't any different.
For these parents, their loss has turned into action, focusing their attention on education and harm reduction programs in hopes of lessening fentanyl's death grip, especially among kids.
With that comes the need for access for a new lifeline, naloxone, or more commonly known as Narcan.
Sterling Elliott says he always carries a Narcan nasal spray.
If the need comes on, I know what I'm doing.
Elliott's a clinical pharmacist at Chicago's Northwestern Medicine. He's training pharmacy students what to do when someone needs a life-saving dose.
This is, I think, the new CPR. This is yet another way that you can be a good Samaritan and save somebody's life.
When a surge of fentanyl poisonings hit the streets of Austin, Texas.
We're gonna do one more, okay?
Security guards administered Narcan and saved lives. Fentanyl poisoning stops the brain from controlling the respiratory system. Narcan blocks the effects of the drug and lets the person breathe.
One big spray up one nostril.
Growing efforts aim to make sure more people have access to Narcan and know how to use it. San Francisco's Department of Health trained thousands of people in the community. Cities like St. Louis have boxes placed in public areas where people can get Narcan for free. And in tiny Oneida, Tennessee, a little girl started a blessing box with food for the needy. Now her dad adds free Narcan kits to the shelves. And in Southern California, the San Fernando Library provides a series of videos, just 6 minutes total time for anyone who needs to know how to use Narcan. And they keep it on hand and give it away. No questions asked.
We do try to assist everyone who comes in through these doors.
That's a big deal, because while it's available over the counter, it is not cheap. A box of Narcan will cost you close to $50. The cost can be prohibitive and be the difference between life and death.
Up next, a look at the newest border hotspot, where Mexican cartels are making huge profits, smuggling illegal fentanyl into the U.S.
Here in San Ysidro, it is still the #1 place for fentanyl being trafficked into the state of California. But we got an inside look recently at the newest hotspot. Nogales is just 1 hour south of Tucson down Interstate 19, a border town that some 20,000 people call home. The road leads you to this port of entry.
This would be the Mariposa truck crossing.
Led by U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Port Director, Michael Humphreys. Humphreys, along with his team of nearly 500 U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers, are responsible for what moves in and moves out of here.
We're bringing in millions upon millions of pounds of food a day, produce, frozen shrimp, fish, that again, 20,000 people aren't going to eat here. It's going throughout the U.S. So everything we do here in Nogales, Arizona means something to people on the West Coast, East Coast.
Commercial drivers are lined up for as far as the eye can see. Humphrey says most products in your home that don't say made in the U.S. came through a southern port on one of these trucks.
Yeah, we get stuff that I'd never seen before.
These vehicles are scanned through large x-ray machines. A screening process is similar to the TSA screening process you experience at the airport. Using the latest technology, Border Protection is looking for anything that doesn't look right. From October 2023 to May of this year, nearly 300,000 commercial vehicles were inspected at this port alone. A similar process plays out on the other side, where cars are crossing the border. Contact is made with the drivers, some vehicles are scanned, and canine officers are put to work to sniff out illegal drugs.
Most folks coming through are coming through for legitimate reasons. We have to find that small, needle in a haystack or needle in a stack of needles.
Humphreys uses social media to spread the word about the vast amount of illegal drugs. In early May of this year, nearly 1 million fentanyl pills and nearly 5 pounds of fentanyl powder were found hidden in door and floor panels. Another 24 pounds of fentanyl powder was found by canine teams, hidden in a modified headlight, with nearly 233,000 fentanyl pills concealed throughout this car. 700,000 fentanyl pills found in these food cans and cartons. The smugglers getting more creative in their effort to get fentanyl across the border. It's a lucrative business, and for them, it is worth the risk.
Go home and pray the rosary. No, you're not. At the border, we don't open the trunk and say, wow, there's a bag of fentanyl. It's deeply concealed.
And the largest recent catch was made on May 31st. More than 3 million fentanyl pills were found by officers in these steel beams that made up the floor of a trailer. And it's not just fentanyl making its way north. Meth, cocaine, heroin, guns, and ammunition have all been seized at the southern border. Pete Flores, Acting Deputy Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, flew in from Washington, D.C. to talk to us about the ongoing battle. He took us inside a highly secure area where drugs and weapons are stored.
What does it mean to get this much fentanyl off the streets?
So it means a number of lives we've saved.
At least 70% of counterfeit street drugs across the United States are laced with fentanyl. Most of it crosses the border through ports in Arizona and California. Mexican cartels control the drug pipeline, and they still heavily rely on China and India for their raw supply. But they're growing more sophisticated, enough to press their own fentanyl pills.
All counterfeit, right? Counterfeit to resemble Oxycontin pills, the M30s. That's kind of what that manufacturing looks like from a counterfeit perspective. So every one of these pills could potentially be a death on the street by themselves.
But Flores says no matter what is being taken off the streets, when it comes to our children, education is key.
The border is not the only place where fentanyl is being smuggled into the United States. Traffickers have used the mail to get drugs from China and India into the country. They also ship machines used to press pills for dealers to sell.
We can build a, $20 billion wall, but if we don't solve this problem, we will not have solved the problem of interdicting drugs.
In 2018, Congress passed the STOP Act to require the post office to provide data on international packages like who's sending it and what's inside. At the International Mail Facility inside New York's JFK Airport, postal inspectors work alongside Customs and Border Protection to detect drugs as well as the chemicals to make them. And they have new tools.
This has been uploaded or basically programmed with AI enhancements and algorithms to detect narcotics.
High-tech analyzers, both large and small, help scan for illegal drugs. Now inspectors can detect fentanyl without needing to open containers or plastic bags, helping the fight on the front lines in the war against this deadly drug.
Just ahead, how a basketball coach enlisted his team to take action after his son died from an accidental overdose. Plus, how the DEA is changing its strategy when it comes to cracking down on fentanyl.
It's a tragedy that spans from California to Utah. A former Fresno State basketball coach never thought that his son, a basketball star turned football standout, would play a deadly game with fentanyl. But he did. And in 2022, at 26 years old, his dream of making it to the NFL ended.
Grief. I'm going to grieve the rest of my life because that's my son.
May 11th, 2022, a day that would forever change the life of Von Webb.
And they called me and told me that they found him. I was so shocked, man. I had no idea, like not a clue, that I didn't know. I was like, what? What are you talking about? And then so we waited and waited, went through all the tests, and they said it was accidental fentanyl.
The former Fresno State assistant basketball coach will likely never know why his youngest son, Talon, died from a fentanyl overdose. The football star at Southern Utah University was disciplined, passionate, and in tip-top shape. He posted this workout video just before he died. His dad says he was determined to reach for the next big thing. Coach Webb believes that his son was pushing himself through years of injuries and pain by self-medicating.
What went wrong? My personal opinion about it, I think that he got a hold of something that wasn't real. You know, these athletes, you know, sometimes they don't know they don't know.
Now, Coach is using his public platform to sound the alarm of the dangers of fentanyl.
In a flash, it's over.
By his side,
that can help your teammate,
his players,
your friend, your son.
Like Leo Colomario, a forward on the men's basketball team.
It was unfortunate. Everybody was really hurt for him. I was especially because I barely didn't know his son personally, but he's just tough to see a person that's seen every day and somebody that's so close to him for his loss. So what was really strong for me seeing how he react afterwards and stuff, how he always holds himself up strong.
Leo admits before Talon died, he didn't know much about the dangers of fentanyl and is thankful to be able to spread a message of awareness with his teammates.
It felt really good knowing the impact that we can have.
Be a good teammate and let's save lives.
Coach Webb is now focused full-time on a nonprofit he started in Talon's memory. It's called Stay Shaded. He hopes that through his loss, another life will be saved.
He's the kind of person that always wanted to help the next person. So I look at it as an opportunity so that I can do that in his honor, and hopefully there are people who will be able to say, hey, thank you, Coach, because on the heels of me losing my son, I don't want anybody else to lose theirs. And it's happening every day.
The Drug Enforcement Agency, or the DEA, has always been focused on drug seizures and arrests. But the agency widened its purview to include education and harm reduction in an effort to stop the deadly consequences of the fentanyl crisis.
We are in our main drug vault that houses a little over 50,000 pieces of evidence.
A rare look inside the DEA's drug vault in Dallas. The lab's assistant director, Jamie Vasquez, walks us through the evidence. All drugs seized by federal agencies from 5 states and sent here to be tested.
Our vault processes it and stores it until it's time for our forensic chemists to analyze it. And our forensic chemists determine the content of the evidence as well as sometimes the purity of it.
What kind of drugs do you get that move through this lab?
The number one drug that we see is methamphetamine, followed by cocaine, fentanyl, and then heroin.
Has fentanyl always been in the top 3?
It has changed drastically over the last 5 years. We've gone from submissions of 3% fentanyl to now close to 20% of what we see contains some sort of fentanyl.
In this case, it's powder fentanyl.
This kilogram can be divided up and made into pills. If you're thinking anywhere, if you're talking 2 milligrams per pill, we're talking about upwards of 500,000 pills.
But 80% of the time, the lab sees fentanyl pressed into pills.
This is about a little over 12,000 pills.
In a minute, you'll see how quickly analysts can test for fentanyl. But before the drugs end up here,
the key number is 70%. You have to know that 70% of these pills right now could kill. It could be an overdose.
It starts here, at the border. The DEA is the first line of defense.
It's all about money. It's about the dollar bill. It's about greed. And that's who we're going after.
Special Agent Daniel Como from the Houston Division tells us drug cartels are mass producing synthetic fentanyl with deadly precision.
Let's look at this. So here's 2 pills. One would think that this is the fake counterfeit pill. But the reality of it is, this is the one made by a drug cartel. So you might have even someone as young as a middle schooler saying, well, I heard about this Xanax. So let me take this Xanax one time just to get a high effect. And they take one of these fake pills and they end up dead. 70% of these pills contain a lethal dose.
You would think that it's not a good business model for these drug cartels to be killing off their clients.
You know, that's the biggest question to ask. And the only answer that I can come with, every time someone dies, there's someone else willing to experiment again. And unfortunately, as long as that continues to be the trend, the drug cartels will stay in business.
Last year's lab results show the DEA seized 521,000 fentanyl tablets.
Look, we're aggressively targeting them, and we're doing it in so many different ways now. We're going on websites, we're going on social media, we're going on all of these apps. Wherever they are, we are too now.
Special Agent Como says parents need to do the same.
Every single parent should talk to their kids about this right now, because it's not necessarily, say, a drug dealer that will push this pill on it. It could be their best friend. It could be their peer. And if you don't have those type of conversations with the kids, they might think nothing of it.
Back here at the lab, fentanyl testing takes priority.
So our triage protocol for evidence coming in is fentanyl and methamphetamine as per our DEA administrator's priority list.
And what have you found?
On average, our pills contain roughly 2 milligrams of fentanyl per pill.
One pill tested from a bag of thousands.
Just swab it, place that in this water. And water goes on the test strip, and in just a matter of very little time,
shows the results in less than a minute.
As you can see from this line on this test strip, we have a positive for fentanyl. So assuming that each tablet contains 2 milligrams, we have enough doses to potentially cause overdoses for over 12,000 people.
Coming up, a look at how social media is playing a dangerous role in the distribution of illegal synthetic opioids ravaging America. You're watching Saving a Generation, the Fentanyl Crisis.
Social media has completely changed the way drug dealers do business. The DEA says it is a huge problem that just compounds the opioid epidemic.
I want him to be remembered for his smile. He had an electrifying smile.
It's unfathomable to us that he's even gone. We talk about him so much that it almost seems like he's here until the reality hits that he isn't.
Henry Zerko loved life and his family and friends. He excelled in sports like hockey, football, and he was an adventurous hiker. His parents, Erica and Peter, say he may have been the youngest of their 3 sons, but he was also the biggest.
Henry had a hip injury, and he was rehabbing from the hip injury.
Treatment for sports-related injuries led to Henry being prescribed painkillers. In college, he struggled with addiction to Xanax. His parents sent him to a treatment center, and he got clean. They got their Henry back, full of life and love. The 23-year-old returned to his studies. In July of 2022, he was visiting his hometown of Scarsdale, New York. It was a week of family dinners, and he made plans to golf with his dad the next day.
I kissed him goodnight. He went upstairs to go to sleep.
But Henry never woke up. Instead, the next morning, Peter found his son draped over his desk, his head resting near the keyboard of his computer.
The toxicology report called it fentanyl intoxication. We call it fentanyl murder. To us, it was murder.
Peter and Erica tell us on his last night alive, Henry was in pain from an old injury and had trouble sleeping. After his death, text messages on his phone revealed he was in communication with the dealer online.
We could read his texts, and he said, quote, "Is this legitimate?" unquote. To which the guy said, "Yes, how much do you want?" Henry said, "I want 1. The guy said, "I have 100. Henry said, "I need to make sure it's safe."
The Zerkos say technology has moved the sale of illicit drugs off of street corners and onto social media. They feel social media platforms need to do more to monitor dealers using their sites to make sales.
Social media has made the availability of contacts between a potential user or buyer and a dealer as easy as clicking.
The proliferation of drug trafficking on social media is so serious that the Drug Enforcement Administration sent out an alert about the emerging threat, saying in part, criminal drug networks are abusing social media to expand their reach, create new markets, and target new clients. The DEA also warns code words and emojis are being used. While the grief over losing their son will never cease, The Zirkos have put their efforts into preventing what happened to them from happening to another family. What initially started as a Facebook post to relatives and friends turned into an article for the Boston Globe.
It was clear that Henry thought he was buying another drug, not something containing a lethal dose of the most powerful non-natural opioid ever synthesized.
It's been over 2 years since Henry's death. Peter and Erica speak out on harm reduction as well as advocate for the opening of safe injection sites and making test strips and the overdose reversing drug Narcan more readily available. From the guitar pick he left on the windowsill to pictures in every room, Henry's presence can be felt all over the home. And now 2 parents have turned pain into purpose.
If we can save or help other families not go through what we've gone through, that's our motivation.
We keep doing it in part because we tried to find a way to talk about Henry every day. Keeps him alive for us.
Nowadays, a high school kid can get on a social media platform and they have their own language, right? The emojis, you just scroll through, find the emoji you're looking for.
Matthew Allen heads up the DEA in Los Angeles. Monitoring social media sites plays a huge role in targeting drug dealers.
We have agents that buy stuff undercover. We have investigations into things that I can't really discuss.
The access makes it easier for an addict who has nothing to lose.
I fully knew the consequences and I accepted them. If I didn't die, that was okay. I was just going to wake up and do it again. But if I died, that was just part of the game.
The most devastating into something like that are the stories that we hear over and over and over about the parents who go to wake their kid up for school the next morning and they find them dead in their bedroom. And that's just absolutely heartbreaking.
Danny Latterman of Ramsey, New Jersey, was one of the earliest fentanyl victims.
And I said, why? Why? I can't understand why.
The accused drug dealer was the father of Danny's football teammate.
His son was the captain of the football team.
In 2014, overdose deaths were at around 47,000. In 2024, that number has increased by 127% to over 107,000.
We're not arresting our way out of this problem.
In fact, the agency is now concentrating on education and harm reduction.
As someone who's been here for over 20 years, I can tell you I've seen the evolution myself. We have like our opioid rapid response team. We've implemented some processes where we can step in and try to continue their care. People that are on medication for opioid disorder.
They also hold summits for families who have lost loved ones to this epidemic. This special agent in charge also always carries Narcan.
We have it in all of our family vehicles. The stigma of drug addiction, we got to get rid of that. I mean, just ask anyone who's tried to kick smoking cigarettes. I mean, how hard that is. Imagine trying to kick something like, an opioid addiction.
It just kept me trapped for so long, that thinking that I was going to die addicted to this.
Chicago is using a proactive approach when it comes to harm reduction from fentanyl use. The Chicago Recovery Alliance has taken the fight to the streets with a drug detection device that is saving lives.
We're doing drug checking back here if you have anything you want to scan.
Inside this mobile unit, parked on a Chicago street corner, harm reduction technician David Paris preps a bag of unknown powder for screening. He's using what's called a Fourier Transform Infrared Spectrometer, or FTIR.
With FTIR, you could scan something right away and we can give you a pretty comprehensive analysis of what you're using.
Paris quickly studies the peaks and patterns produced by the sample, then compares them to an analytical reference. He also runs a secondary check using amino test strips. This sample tests positive for fentanyl and nitazene, another powerful synthetic opioid.
We would advise them to please be careful, don't use alone.
They don't stop people from taking drugs, but knowing what's in them is a safety net for substance users.
We're not cops, we're not trying to incriminate people.
The goal here is to save lives.
Next, turning loss into action. How one mother is using her platform to create change, and what state lawmakers are doing to turn the tide in the fight against the fentanyl epidemic.
The fentanyl crisis can hit any of us, even those who are aware of the danger. Angela Kanicki was an investigative reporter in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, when she got the news that her very own daughter died from a fentanyl poisoning. Now she's making it her mission to find solutions and doing it in the name of her daughter. In Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Angela Kennecke was a familiar face in everyone's home for more than 30 years. She anchored the evening news and was known for investigative reports.
In a tragic and devastating way.
But to Emily
and I were close.
She was also a mom.
We used to hike together and be outside, do yoga and things like that.
And like millions of teens, her daughter Emily struggled with substance abuse.
I knew I had a kid with a problem, and I thought she was using marijuana and Xanax. She wasn't upfront with me about the extent of her substance use disorder and what substances she was using.
An intervention was planned.
The whole family was involved. Her siblings, her stepdad, her dad, everybody. You know, I was just writing about how much she meant to me and how incredibly talented she was.
Emily was a talented artist.
I'm Emily Groth, and I'm a senior at O'Gorman High School.
If she was doing this kind of stuff at 17 or 18 years old, what could she have done at 30 if her talent would have been allowed to develop?
A few days before the intervention and just before Mother's Day.
Yeah, 3 days before Mother's Day. May is a really hard month for me.
Angela got a call from Emily's dad.
He said, in the strangest voice I've ever heard, Emily's OD'd, I think she's dead. And I was like, what? I couldn't register those words.
The scene at Emily's apartment, like so many Angela experienced as a journalist. Police lights, paramedics, an officer blocking the door. Angela pushed her way in.
Yeah, a few moments later, the paramedic came out and told me that she was gone, that there was nothing more they could do, and that they had administered 2 doses of Narcan.
Her body on the floor of her bedroom. Angela by her side.
That's the part that haunts me. You know, I was just me and her in a room. I mean, I'm glad I had that because some parents aren't allowed near their children.
Emily died from heroin laced with fentanyl, enough fentanyl to kill 6 people.
I actually followed the ambulance in my car for quite a ways till they took her to the morgue. You know, worst night of my life.
A few days later, Angela delivered the news with a broken heart.
The opioid epidemic has hit home in a tragic and devastating way for me personally. On May 16th, my 21-year-old daughter, Emily, died of an overdose. Her official cause of death was fentanyl poisoning.
That's when Angela went to work on the biggest investigation of her life.
We began with the inspiration for this KELOLAND News special report, my own daughter, Emily.
The more she researched, the more she found the growing number of lives lost from drugs laced with deadly fentanyl.
She thought she was getting heroin. She was suffering from substance use disorder. She wasn't intending to die. She shouldn't have died.
I felt it was my duty to speak out and to say what happened to me and to be vulnerable with people.
Angela started a podcast called Grieving Out Loud to raise awareness.
We have to find that resilience within us.
She travels the country speaking to thousands to prevent it from happening to them.
I know we're making a difference, but I want to see this drug epidemic end.
It's all part of Emily's hope.
I started it just within a few months after losing her.
A charity that raises money to get people into treatment and recovery. But perhaps most importantly, education.
Our gold star is our substance use prevention curriculum for grades K through 5.
What do you think it is? Grace.
All of these things that kids need to learn and what substances do to the brain and how to protect their bodies and brains. I think parents are really realizing that this is vital.
Angela still holds on to the intervention letter she never got to read Emily.
I just thought I had time. And I didn't have any time because of fentanyl.
And while she didn't have time with Emily, Angela still has hope.
You know, I never gave up hope on my daughter, and that hope lives on through Emily's hope.
Angela's work extends to our U.S. Capitol. She was a guest at the White House for last year's Opioid Awareness Day, one of 50 people invited who lost loved ones to overdoses.
I think together we can make a huge difference. It's wonderful to have these policymakers listen to us, to hear about the efforts that we're doing in our local communities, but also to learn from us and to learn what can be done to make things better.
Across the country, family members like Angela have helped fuel changes in laws at the state level. Last summer, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed 4 bills into law, among them a House bill known as Tucker's Law. It requires school districts to educate students about fentanyl. It's named after Tucker Rowe, who died at the age of 19 after taking a tainted Percocet pill bought on social media. His mom, Stephanie, helped push for the legislation.
I believe that if teenagers and others are aware of the dangers, they understand just how lethal this poison is, just how addictive it is, they can make better decisions.
Another bill allows fentanyl deaths to be investigated as murder. Texas now one of several states ramping up criminal penalties. Alabama lawmakers set mandatory minimum sentences for fentanyl trafficking based on the weight of the drug. Penalties can go as high as life in prison. Georgia created a new category of crime for prosecutors. Now anyone who sells fentanyl to someone who dies can face felony aggravated involuntary manslaughter charges. Kansas increased penalties for distributing fentanyl. The drug can also be included under child endangerment crimes. And in California, voters could put pressure on people who deal fentanyl. Proposition 47 includes tougher penalties for selling drugs mixed with fentanyl and makes it easier for a dealer to be charged with murder if it results in a death. On the federal level, Congress passed the bipartisan Fend Off Fentanyl Act earlier this year. The new law will crack down on criminal organizations from chemical suppliers in China to the Mexican cartels.
We attack where this stuff's being made by going after their profits.
President Biden signed the bill into law as part of a national security package, but other legislation aimed at curbing the flow of fentanyl remains stalled on Capitol Hill.
Test strips can be used to determine if drugs contain fentanyl. Drug recovery experts say those test strips can save lives, but they're not legal in some states. While these new laws take aim at education and prosecution, many fall short when it comes to harm reduction. In Indiana, lawmakers blocked a bill earlier this year to decriminalize drug test strips. The strips could now be considered drug paraphernalia. Opponents of decriminalization worry they could encourage people to use illicit drugs. The parents we spoke with in the Los Angeles DEA believes this is short-sighted and that test strips can prevent drug deaths.
It gives that moment of pause. It tells you that, fentanyl is present in the substance you're about to use, and it allows you to make a different decision.
Harm reduction experts do emphasize that drug testing strips are not 100% accurate. While testing drugs can reduce risk, it's important for users to have naloxone on hand.
Coming up, taking the battle in the fentanyl crisis to the streets. Plus, some final thoughts from parents on their loss and next steps. We'll be right back.
More than 2/3 of drug overdose deaths now involve illicitly manufactured fentanyl.
It is a deadly and devastating crisis, but some people on the front lines are finding innovative ways to help fight the problem and save lives.
We can't rehabilitate somebody who's dead.
A Dallas area program is pairing first responders with drug recovery experts. Here's how it works. The overdose response team pulls data from every overdose call. The goal? To meet the person who overdosed face to face.
Asking them, hey, can we help you? And meeting them where they're at.
The team says it's making a difference. They provide free boxes of Narcan, but they also offer connections to recovery programs.
At the end of the day, every single person that we connect with is somebody's loved one. There's somebody who wants that person alive.
In Arkansas, there is now an app to help people find resources to fight fentanyl addiction. The Arkansas Opioid Recovery Partnership created the Revive AR app, a free one-stop shop.
There's a real need for resources, treatment, recovery, prevention, and understanding to defeat the stigma around opioid use disorder.
In Pennsylvania, state officials teamed up with a nonprofit substance use treatment provider to launch a mobile rehab program. It's called Driving Recovery for PA. The mobile program aims to help hundreds of people in a region with some of the state's highest rates of opioid overdoses.
One takeaway from all of this is that you do not have to face this problem alone. Some families who lost loved ones to fentanyl are working for change, taking steps to keep others from experiencing similar loss.
It does re-traumatize me every time I have to say it.
It's painful.
It gets harder for us to talk about it every time.
For a parent to tell the story of their child's death.
Time stood still, and it did for a really long time afterwards. Let's see what we have here.
But for these families, there is a vital need to share.
People need to know They need to know how available it is and how responsible they have to be to watch it.
I want to take people there with me because I want them to understand how awful it is and how no one ever expects to be put in this situation.
To turn agonizing loss into action.
I'm moving forward. That's going to be part of my mission, is to make sure that I put as much information out there and bringing as much awareness to every person I can reach.
Powerful knowledge gained through tragedy.
Hearing it from us is from a mother that's been through it, does make an impact on the kids more than just hearing it from someone on a video, you know.
I would just say, talk to your children every single day about fentanyl. They're going to get annoyed, but it's your job.
And pushing to make a difference.
Test. Don't do drugs by yourself. We think test strips should be readily available.
You have to empower the user to protect themselves, and they can't do that by themselves.
Working to limit the damage from this deadly drug.
If we can just save one life, if one mother, and I always say mother because I am a mom, but of course any family member, if I can spare them that kind of pain, it will have been worth it.
As we have seen tonight, there are no easy solutions. Fentanyl is poisoning our friends, our families, our children. No one is immune.
From law enforcement agencies across America to parents who have experienced unbearable loss, they all agree there are first steps: awareness, education, harm reduction programs, all a path to saving a generation. Thanks for joining us. Good night.